No, you're not watching the wrong video. This night sky really is part of our story. I'm Joe Robertson with Juniper Networks, and this is the first of a series of videos on the networking life cycle. Our focus in this series, however, is going to be on the life cycle part of that subject rather than the networking part. And that brings us to this image. We see cycles everywhere in nature, the constellations slowly replacing one another through the course of the year, repeating the cycle every 12 months. The moon waxes and wanes. The 4 seasons come and go in their regular cycle. So it's only natural that our human activities follow the same type of life cycle. If you look at projects anywhere of whatever type, they have 3 distinct phases: planning the project, building whatever it is, then using it, taking care of it, and finally cycling back to the beginning to plan changes, improvements, and evolutions. This applies to all projects, whether large or small, and there have been very few projects bigger than the Hubble Space Telescope. Let's look at it as an example. People have imagined placing a telescope in space above the distortion of our atmosphere for decades. The Hubble Space Telescope was conceived in the 1970s and went through an intensive design and construction phase through the 1980s. It was finally placed into orbit by the Space Shuttle in 1990, and it has been working ever since. The Hubble project has been extremely complex. Thousands of scientists and engineers have worked on it. But from the very beginning, they viewed the project with this basic life cycle: plan, build, operate, repeat. When you look at how the NASA engineers planned for Hubble, they used large teams of experts to decide what experiments to put in the satellite, then to design them and make sure that they would work in space. Then they moved to the build phase, creating not only the instruments and experiments, but also the power and cooling systems, all radio and transmission systems. Oh, and all of it had to fit in the satellite that you see here, which in turn had to fit into the back of the space shuttle. Finally, once the telescope was up in space and running, NASA had to operate it. This meant not only running lots of experiments, but monitoring the satellite all day, every day, taking care of the myriad little and big problems that come up. And guess what? A big one came up almost immediately. Scientists discovered that there was a problem with the main mirror. It was out of focus. So the engineers designed a big lens to correct the problem, and astronauts flew up to the space shuttle to install it. They have since been up 4 more times for further servicing missions. But the operational phase wasn't just about running and fixing the machine. They also spent a lot of time planning how to make it even better. NASA's engineers designed new experiments to replace older ones and sent astronauts up to do the upgrades. And each of those improvements followed the same plan, build, operate life cycle. Here at Juniper Networks, we're the same. The best way to get the most out of technology, whether ours or anyone else's, is to focus on the total life cycle of a project, rather than just on the product itself. Why? Because it works. The actual purchase of the product is an instant in time, but you have to live with it for years. Which is why whether you are replacing hundreds of devices or installing just a few firewalls, proper preparation and planning are crucial to success. The Juniper customer services and support team's whole reason for being is to accompany you during all 3 phases. So what does that involve for networking or security? I'll start with the plan phase. First, let's agree on something. We're all human, and as such, planning often gets shortchanged, especially for relatively small projects. We're creatures of action. We want to cut to the chase. But regardless of the size of the project, it's still important to do some basic planning or risk results that do not match your expectations or your boss's. Although it's important to understand what you want to see as results at the end of the project, it's equally important to understand where you are today. This means doing an unbiased assessment of your current environment and evaluating just what needs to happen to move from where you are today to where you want to be. In this phase, you must develop the high-level architecture designs as well as the detailed design of network devices, configurations, and interconnections. It's at this point that you choose exactly what equipment you will invest in. And this is where the initial project planning occurs as well, detailing dates, responsibilities, and dependencies. Decisions made now will impact not only on how your network or security solution is implemented, but also how flexible it will be, how well it can evolve, and how easy it will be for you to manage. As the name suggests, the build phase focuses on the deployment of products. It isn't just as simple as bolting the boxes into a rack and flipping the switch. There's a lot involved in migrating from the existing environment to the new one. Installation and configuration, system test, system bring up, and so on. Not to mention integrating it into your existing management systems. Then, of course, there's the excitement and tension of the cutover into production. This is the point where all of the work of the plan and build phases comes together. So now everything is in and working, it's time to operate it. This is generally the longest of the three phases, lasting many years as the products are used on a daily basis. It requires activities that are both reactive, such as resolving faults and issues, and proactive, like upgrading software and preventative maintenance. Always trying to get the most out of your investment. And as your business grows and changes, new services and applications will be added. New subscribers, clients, and user groups will be brought on board, and traffic will increase. It's essential during the operate phase to continually reassess your network to ensure it continues to meet these changing requirements. This may lead to new software, new hardware configurations, or new equipment. Or if the environment has changed substantially, a new architecture, which of course loops us back to a new plan phase of the networking lifecycle. Structure and rigor are the hallmarks of a successful project, and it is clear that the best outcomes are achieved when you consider the whole lifecycle. At Juniper Networks, we have service offerings for every phase of the networking lifecycle, and we have worked with thousands of customers and partners on projects around the world. It is clear that successful networking and security projects are the result of proper execution during all three phases of the lifecycle: plan, build, and operate. So as you plan your next projects, keep in mind that the networking lifecycle is an important path to follow. You need to carefully understand where you are, what your goal is, and how to get from here to there. As they say, if you don't know where you're going, any route will get you there. In the next video of this series, we will focus in more detail on the plan phase of the life cycle. I hope you will join me.